Since we want to talk about respect, let's talk about what your Vikings did, to their gods, for their gods. And let's talk about what happens if you add homosexuality back then to their gods. What happens to people who were homosexual back in the Viking days? I mean, you seem to think a lot about Christianity, even though I preach to everyone. But now it's your turn, since you want to get religious and everything. Oh, and I don't suggest you debate with me. I'm a PhD in history.
You ever been schooled by a wabbit? Your preceptions are most likely based off Tacitus, where he claimed these things used to happen. Now then, if I were Tacitus, and my life and livelihood depended on my reports, I might try and invent a few things. Know what I mean, Doc? Luckily, in modern times, we have science and reason. There's a reason now. Often, bias is louder than reason. Doc, now this was the early days, when they were still 30-ish tribes wandering, before they found a home. We can also look at their behavior. You can tell a lot about a person by how they behave. Am I right? Doc, let's take a look into the surviving Norse sagas and the law. Put on your deductive reasoning hat, Doc. It's about to get wascoey. It was regarded in two lights, Doc. Either, or liability to the family. Know what I mean, Doc? If you were a top, you could still procreate and continue the line, and your boomer parents could survive off you. It's about propagation and survival, but also, as you said, about respect. Very important to the Norse. That's why if you were a bottom, you were effeminate. Therefore, a liability to your line. And unmanly, they had a name for this, ergi. And it was considered a grave insult. But nobody really understands why. It's basically a giant insult to your whole family. That was a big deal back then. Entire blood feuds and stuff. And basically, Doc, when you insult someone with the word ergi, you're basically saying your whole line dies off with you. You let down your whole family. Right, Doc? Bringing shame to all the ancestors before you. They got you here. Didn't stomp out people in a bog, neither. I'm a stinker. Pause and give that a read, Doc. But let's highlight one section real quick. Agriculture a living requires reproduction. Who's gonna take care of the boomers? And as long as you're making babies, who cares? The end. Say, Doc, isn't it strange? Isn't it suspicious that over 150 of the surviving saga barely mention it? That even their later recorded laws barely mention it? But we base the entire thing off one Roman guy giving a work report to his boss? Rome wasn't built in a day, Doc. Neither was your narrative. And if Rome doesn't look super spectacular and the Norse look weaker, the people won't panic when we come for them. That's right. You fell for Roman propaganda. You're just a bigot looking for confirmation. And you couldn't find none, Doc. You had to go to pre-Viking age. If you're a professor, then I'm a wabbit. I think it's high time that facts, reason, and science outweigh the volume of your bias. In closing, it wasn't about the gods. It wasn't about gender. It wasn't about race. It was about propagation and survival. This is why the ancestors would adopt, marry outside of, foster others, like wabbits. Oh, the Mandalorians. I understand you're a professor. It's hard to find credible sources outside of the law. And there's a lot of lore, Doc, and a lot of propaganda, ancient and modern. Now then, since you uprooted yourself, why don't you go plant your turnip in a chair, crack a book open?